everyone. This is Raphael.
And I'm Lauren.
We're the Pacheco siblings, and welcome to the Hypercube podcast, a talk show in which two siblings converse about anything and everything. We are joined today by a very special guest. Julie Floro is an American photographer based out of Pennsylvania who specializes in creative fantasy portraits. Her work has amassed a loyal following on Instagram, where she shares her photos, her process, and some personal thoughts behind many of her otherworldly shoots. Julie, welcome to the podcast.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it's a pleasure. So, for those who don't know, I did get to do a photo shoot with Julie Floro. And of course, we'll link her Instagram page in the notes so you could see all of her incredible work. But yeah, Haley and I, Julie shot our engagement photo shoot while we were still courting and when after we'd proposed. So that was a really special experience. And I think we're going to dive into that a bit in our conversation today. But yeah, for you, first off though, friend of the show and just good personal friend now, Dakota Farnsworth, voice actor who has been on the show multiple times. He has a bit of a history with photography as well. And this was like a year back, but I wrote it down, so I'm going to make sure it happens. He was very interested when he'd caught wind that we were going to have you as a guest on the show. He posed the question that he wanted me to ask you. And I'm going to ask it because it's something I'm wondering as well. It's something that apparently Dakota likes to ask all photographers, which is, what camera do you use and why?
Okay, so I definitely have an answer for that. I feel like it might disappoint you though, because it's a bit out of date. I'm still going to answer the question. But I use and have used nearly my entire career a Nikon D750 camera and a 35 millimeter 1.4 lens. That is like my tried and true combo. I would swear by it. I use it for every single thing. However, it's 2024 and mirrorless is the new thing. I don't know if you've heard about that, but mirrorless cameras. So I feel like people hear what I use and they're like, oh, okay, oldie. That's so old. That's so out of date. I mean, it works for me. I love it, but I know that eventually it will become probably fairly obsolete. So while I think it's a great combo to use, would I suggest that people go invest in that? Probably not. But if you want exactly what I have, that's what it is.
Hey, no worries.
It works for you, but you wouldn't exactly recommend it.
Yeah, I have to update my gear eventually, but I'm really stuck on it. I mean, it's literally what I've been using for like 15 years.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I mean, you're clearly very well practiced with that. You achieve great results. That really feels like it's kind of a part of your style. Nikon, I assume they make mirrorless cameras now. Yeah, they do. Yeah, so
it's just a matter of changing over and learning all of the ins and outs of a whole new camera. When my camera, it just feels like a part of my body at this point. Like I could work it with my eyes closed, and the thought of getting something new, it freaks me out a little bit, but I know eventually I'll have to bite the bullet and just do it.
Change is terrifying. Yeah,
and that's very interesting because obviously I think you said your lens opens up to 1.4, you said? Like that's actually really awesome. You could get some really good low light performance out of that. And I know you have, because I know, like, even on the one shoot I did with you on our engagement shoot, it wasn't nearly as bright as it looks in the photos. Like it was getting
it was stormy that day.
Yeah, because it was overcast. It was and we were pretty late into getting to our location. So like it was getting well into evening. The sun was on its way down. And you got some pretty good results there.
Yeah, and we were deep in the woods I don't remember what month that was, but I know it was summer. So it was like full thick tree coverage. It was pretty dark. But yeah, I love the shots from your shoot.
Sorry, I was going to ask as well, doing like location shoots like that where you're literally in the middle of like the woods, do you take lighting with you, or do you just like use entirely natural lighting?
I don't. I just use entirely natural light. It sometimes really freaks me out sometimes. But at this point, I mean, I don't think I've I've ever gotten to a shoot and been like, there's not some sort of light source that I can work with to make this work, or, going with the light that I'm given to just make it a vibe. Like sometimes I might get a little panicky about the lack of light, but it always comes through. It always works out. And I remember that I have literally done shoots at 1:00 in the morning and they still turn out cool. So regardless of the light that I'm given, something cool is going to come out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So I feel like working with low light conditions is one of the pitfalls that I think a lot of people who are first getting into photography have a lot of difficulty with, because there's a lot to learn about working in those conditions, right? And how you use light and how you do your exposure to begin with. I mean, what are some of the big tips that you would give people who are like maybe newer to photography, and want to learn to do that? Because I know that's something I've had to build on for a long time, and learning what to do with ISO in that situation is probably the biggest thing. But what sort of tips would you give as somebody who's worked in such low light conditions a lot?
Yeah, it can be tough. I'll usually look for either the ambient light source, which is the light that is available in our current location, whether that be window light if I'm inside somewhere, or like if there's like street light from a window. If I know it's going to be a spot that's really dark, I might bring props. Like I have definitely brought lanterns places, lamps, any kind of interesting light source that I might want to add, knowing that it's going to be dark. I would just say, if you're going into a place that is dark, you're having to utilize low light, I would say give yourself grace. Hopefully it's not like a paid client shoot. I think that people should experiment in all kinds of light sources or light scenarios, so that when and if you are in like a paid client situation, you feel confident. But hopefully it's like an experimental thing and you can go into it giving yourself some grace and kind of look at it as like an experimental play date with you and your camera. So like seeking out the light that is already there available to you and looking at how the light looks from different directions, whether you're backlighting or like if the window is behind them or the window is in front of them, or definitely bringing, like I said, some props to play with the light, adding in some additional light if you feel like you might really be stuck in a pickle. But then also, you might just have to shoot at like an aperture like 1.4, and you might just have to go really slow and try not to move your camera too much. It might be messy. It might, just end up feeling really hard. But I think if you go into it with some grace, you're going to realize that you can create some really cool images either way if you just let yourself have fun with it.
Yeah, and that fun aspect is really a key part, because I know with you post a lot of photos, and not all of them are necessarily like paid client work. Like you'll do like stuff that is just for you, and you'll do self-portraits and other random things like that. Like you're getting a lot of work in with your craft that isn't all like that high of a stake.
Yeah, for sure. I think that that's really, really important too, to make time to just go out and play and experiment.
Oh, absolutely.
And like when it comes to shooting in low light too, I guess, because you mentioned like, opening your aperture way up. Because I know with you, I remember seeing a post of yours where you kind of got into technical details about how you get like sharp photos. And like, I know you like to shoot at very high shutter speeds. Is that ever something you compromise on because of the light? Or are you pretty much always high shutter speed all the time?
No, I definitely have had situations where I have to lower my shutter speed. And there are a few times where I've done that. And I just feel like I've totally like effed over the shoot. But thankfully, when I have done that, it was just like my own experimental stuff. Like I'm thinking of, as an example, last year, I did this photo shoot in an abandoned school theater. And I had a group of my friends all wearing angel wings, and it was inside and it was dark and the sun was setting. And I just remember being so stressed out because I just knew that I was not well equipped for this concept. I wasn't prepared. I should have brought additional light and I hadn't. And I was like really lowering my shutter speed. I was shooting at 1.4 to get any kind of light that I could, but 1.4 with a group of like 5 people, it's just not great. Right. And I got those images back when I looked at them at home, and I felt sick to my stomach because the images looked like garbage. I sat on them for 5 months because I was so, it's the perfectionism in me. I was so ashamed at like what I should have known how to tackle this light situation better. Why did I go so low with my shutter speed? Why was I not better prepared? And after I beat myself up about it for months and sat on the images for a while and then looked at them with some grace, I realized that they were really cool. And even though they were messy and honestly sloppy and not perfect, they gained so much character because of that. So, long answer to your question, yes, I have definitely shot at low shutter speeds, and it hasn't always been kind to me, but I try to be kind to myself in those situations. And if I am doing client work, I just make sure that I'm not putting myself directly in a scenario where that might have to happen.
No, that's completely fair. And yeah, we'll definitely link that post for that shoot in the show notes. I have seen that one, and honestly, it turned out phenomenal. Like, I don't think you'd be able to tell that it was shot under such trying conditions. But I think that's a huge testament also to the amount of grace that an audience has for technical imperfections in the face of like composition. I feel like that's the thing that absolutely people always notice most, is just like, if it's well composed, if there's like interesting content, then it's so easy to overlook any kind of technical imperfections.
Yeah, that was actually kind of the shoot that sort of springboarded a lot of the grace that I allow myself to give towards myself now, because it was one of the first times that I felt like I really let a large group of people down. And then when I showed the pictures to them, they were like, "What are you talking about? These are amazing." And then when I posted them on Instagram, my audience, it was like one of my best shoots that I had done the entire year, like best received. And I just had this moment of realization, like, it's not always about the perfect image. Sometimes it's about the heart and the story and how people are perceiving the images themselves. And yeah, that was a really cool experience for me.
That's awesome. I think that's a lesson that everybody has to learn in their creative journey is, I guess, and Lauren, you often talk to me about magic, right? Because you're very fond of the magician's craft. And like the difference between the magician's knowledge and the audience's knowledge. And it can be really difficult when you get in your own head and not understand how other people are going to perceive your work. Because oftentimes you're going to be more critical than an audience member is who doesn't know what you know about the struggles of it.
Always. You'll always be more critical of your own work than somebody who's outside of your own experience, because you know everything that you did to mess up. And it's like going into it, maybe in that kind of situation, you know that you should have known better, but your audience doesn't necessarily know that. Then they only see what you present. So you can say, "Oh yes, this is exactly what I intended to do." And that's all that they should, like, if they are just coming for your work and they see that, it's like, "Oh yeah, that's really cool. That's dope. That looks sweet." And they understand the situation. Say, "Oh yeah, it was a bit low light. You did the best that you could. This is still cool."
For sure.
And you can also like lean into those imperfections as well. If you look at some of the experimental like photography that has been done historically, for when people were trying to figure out like the bounds of what can be done with photography, like, fully leaning into the open aperture and open like shutter to get like that kind of ethereal like vibe. You can also go that way as well.
Oh yeah, there's definitely lots of creative solutions to any given any given issue. But that being said, I kind of also, we've kind of gone into a lot of these technical details. I kind of want to go in a different direction as well, because we're always interested to find out about people's creative journeys. Because like to enter a creative lifestyle is a whole ordeal and not an easy one. And so it's like, what is it that gets people into that is always very fascinating to hear. So I kind of want to know a little bit more about your story. Like, how did you get into photography? How did you realize this was something you wanted to do?
My dad gave me a camera. You know, that's the cliche, cheesy. My dad gave me a camera when I was a child. My dad gave me a camera when I was 12. It was his old film camera. He used to be a wedding photographer back in the day. And he gave me his film camera just to play around with. And so I learned photography on film. And I started just with shooting things like flowers or sunsets or just pretty nature things. And people started telling me that I had just like a really good eye for it. And it felt really nice to be encouraged in this craft that I was really excited about. And so, you know, I kept playing around with the film camera, and then little by little, eventually when the internet days, I don't know if you guys know Flickr. When I guess it was about 2009, I joined Flickr, and it was like, it opened up this world to me of just all of these amazing photographers who are doing all kinds of creative, inspiring self-portraits were on there a lot. There were a couple photographers that just really, really stood out to me, and they were creating these self-portraits or portraits of other people that were just so otherworldly and transportive. And I remember seeing them and just being so awestruck that these kinds of pictures existed. I felt like when I looked at them, I felt like I was like looking at glimpses of a dream or another world. And it totally captivated me, because all growing up, I just had this wild imagination. You know, my parents always encouraged us, go play outside, go play with your toys. So we were always outside pretending to be, me and my sister, we would pretend to be like wolves or squirrels, or we would just be, you know, climbing trees or playing out in nature. And we always just had these wild imaginations with our toys. And I feel like that wild imagination that was so deeply encouraged in me as I was younger, it just followed into my later years, and then into my art and into my photography. And then when I saw these people on the internet creating these other imaginative worlds with their cameras, I was like, I have to do that. So I started myself dabbling with self-portraiture because I was too shy to ask other people to model for me. So I was like, well, I'll take self-portraits. You know, it could just be me and my camera. And those were just such wonderful, beautiful, experimental days, just going out and exploring with a prop or a cool location and creating these otherworldly concepts. And I guess eventually, as I got older, it's all I wanted to do was this creative stuff. And occasionally I would photograph my friends, and I would be running off to the woods with them in some kind of a crazy outfit with some kind of a crazy prop. And the people that I were shooting occasionally would tell me just how fun and how cool it was to be in those kinds of photos. It's like this invitation to leave your everyday mundane life and go pretend that you are something else, or that you are somewhere else, and create artwork that you can look back and really like feel like you were there. And that kind of, I guess that was like the springboard into what I do now.
Wow. Yeah, that's
awesome.
That is amazing. And also to know that you started on actual like film too.
Yeah.
Film shooting is incredible. And I know like so much has shifted into the world of digital nowadays in terms of photography and filmmaking on our end, but there's still something kind of, I don't know, magical about the tangible nature of film photography. I've never had a chance to shoot on film myself, but I have like a kind of slight fascination with it. But
you should try it.
Very fascinating.
Yeah, maybe I should.
Yeah, I feel like one of the best parts too is that you're only limited to, I haven't shot on film forever, so I don't remember, but like, what is it, 24 photos on a roll of film?
Right.
So you have to be really intentional about every time you click the shutter. Like we're just, with the digital camera, we can just click, 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 click and not think. And when you have a digital camera, it really makes you think and be intentional And I love that. And I miss that aspect of my creativity. So I have thought about dabbling in film again too.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, that's one thing that I always hear people who have shot on film talk about is the limitations are so like mind-opening because they force you, like you said, to make intentional decisions because of the fact that you have so few takes. And that's just fascinating to me. And I guess to me as a writer as well, it kind of reminds me of what I've heard of other writers talking about, like writing on a typewriter, right? Instead of on a computer. Mm-hmm. Like you're dealing with those same kind of limitations, or writing by hand for that matter as well, right? Of you're limited and you have to be a lot more thoughtful and intentional before you commit anything because you have such strong limitations. But limitations oftentimes are the genesis of great creativity. And so that aspect is definitely fascinating. But yeah, that is extraordinary. And I love the fact that, I guess for me, when it comes to photography, I've considered myself primarily like a writer and filmmaker in terms of art forms. But, you know, I've dabbled in photography in terms of still shooting. But like, I guess there's never been something about photography that really felt attractive to me as like an entire project endeavor before I found your photos, actually, when Haley showed them to me. And I was like,
oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, I did. I saw that because I was like, I'd seen like bits and pieces of this kind of stuff, but I'd never seen someone for whom that was like their whole thing was creative style photography. And that for me was like finally a photography form that I felt like I saw and I was like, yes, I get that. Like that is something that feels, I don't know, exciting to do as a photographer, like something that's actually, because it's basically storytelling as well. Like you are creating little dioramas and worlds in each of your photo shoots, it feels like. Like what's that process like? How do you, in terms of generating ideas, and I know you do a lot of client work as well. Can you talk about that process a bit?
Sure. So if I'm creating my own photo shoot, like for myself, it usually starts with some sort of inspiration that either came from a location or an item of clothing or a prop that I found. And then from there, I'll kind of build off of, like, if it's a prop, I'll think like, what could someone be doing with this prop? And then I'll ask myself, why are they doing that thing with that prop? And then where would that be taking place? And it kind of like builds and builds and builds like a snowball until it becomes this big, huge concept. And sometimes it's a thing that will sit in my brain for years until it happens because it's still building and building and building. But sometimes it can be a little bit simpler. Like I just want to, like, maybe I'll see something that inspires me and I'm ready to go immediately. Like a few weeks ago, actually at the same location that I did you and Haley's shoot, ooh, it's fall, and I noticed all of the leaves falling into the water. If you remember the creek there, mm-hmm. and I saw the way that the leaves were on the water, and I was so inspired by it. I was like, I have to come back like tomorrow and do a photo shoot. So I grabbed my friend and I had him lay in the chilling water in the leaves, and that was the photo shoot that we did, and it was so fun and beautiful and inspiring. But yeah, when I am creating these stories and worlds, they always start from one of those things, a prop, a wardrobe, or a location. If it's a client shoot, they're usually coming to me with an idea of a character they want to be, or clothes that they really wish that they could wear, or a location that they love. And then I'm kind of building off of their idea. I think of you and Haley specifically, like you guys. I loved how prepared you guys were. I feel like people are not normally that prepared, but you guys like had your whole write-up of your characters down to like your sample images and the character traits and the storyline. Like that makes it so much easier for me because I don't have to snowball anything in my head. I'm just going with what you give me. But yeah, usually if it's a client shoot, I'm starting with whatever they give me. And if there's gaps there, then I fill them in myself, or maybe there's a conversation about how we can fill them in together. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. Not to like relate it back to one of our like bread and butter creative outlets of tabletop role playing games, but it honestly sounds a whole lot like GMing. Like it's a similar sort of process of like iteration and feedback and collaboration. And yeah, like that's really cool. But good to know. Apparently, we were of above average preparedness.
Raph, that's just you.
Fair.
No, I was seriously so impressed when you guys sent me your whole write up. I was like, I don't even have to do work. I literally have to show up. Like, you guys already know who your characters are, what you're doing, what you're about, what you're wearing. I was just like, great. That makes everything so much easier for me because all I have to do is show up and shoot it.
Like, I'll just bring my camera. Work's already done.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad we could give you that experience because it's definitely one I treasure that feeling, honestly, when I'm directing. Like, say if I have like an actor or something who is just like really prepared and on point and like doing their character work and all that. Like, it really feels like when you have good collaboration like that, like it just makes the process smooth and fun. Like, you only have to like get the joy of the process rather than like sluggishness that it could be sometimes.
Yeah, and I know that part of the job for me is helping people who need help, but sometimes it is a lot easier just to be able to fully put all of my brain power in just like, okay, these people know what they're doing, they know what they want, they know who they are in this shoot. All I have to do is use all of my creative power to just be creative with the posing and the images, and just only put my work in that aspect of the planning. So yeah, I definitely don't expect everyone to show up as prepared as you guys did. Like, that's very, very rare. But
a full backstory write-up.
Yeah, when it happens, it's very much appreciated.
That's amazing. I'm glad that we got to have that. But let's talk about that then. Let's go. I guess we've talked a bit about your process. So I guess we could kind of use this as a case study to go a little bit in depth of your process. Because that was a particularly special shoot. Obviously, we approached you through your website, like, you know, kind of going the traditional route of getting in as a client, and went through your whole process. We started communicating well ahead of time. I actually hadn't even told Haley yet when I first got in touch with you, because I was waiting for the proposal to happen before I told her, by the way, I'm booking a shoot with Julie Floro for our engagement shoot. And that absolutely floored her because she absolutely loves your work. And again, was the one who introduced me to you. After all that was said and done, though, we kind of got into that planning phase. And I timed it for a trip that I knew she was going to take from Oklahoma up to Pennsylvania, because that's where I was living at the time. And we timed it for that trip. We set our dates and all that. But the actual day was a bit of an ordeal. And I feel like that doesn't quite, you wouldn't know just from looking at the photos. But it was a bit of an ordeal because there was so much we were trying to do. We were we assembled all our costume pieces ourselves. And we'd kind of got this whole look. Because I know I think you have like a wardrobe and prop closet and stuff that you often draw on for your shoots. But I think ours was like so specific. I don't really think there was much we were able to use out of that.
You guys brought all of your own stuff except for the bow and arrow and the quiver.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the bow and arrow and the quiver, that was yours. But yeah, other than that, we had a lot of work cut out for ourselves. But we were like, screw it. This is the vision we have. Let's do it. But on the actual day of the shoot, and thankfully weather and everything allowed that we were able to do it at our scheduled time, I do believe. But yeah, there was a lot going on, as Haley had to get her hair done up. Then we had to do it was like an hour and a half drive to the makeup artist that you work with, who's also really brilliant. I'll definitely put her in the show notes as well. And, you know, and then from there to the actual shooting location, which I think was like another half hour to 45 minutes or something like that. So yeah. And, you know, the hair appointment went long in the morning. It did get done, but it was, you know, it definitely put us behind schedule a bit. And that was kind of like a stressful situation to be in. And we were running out of daylight, and we were aware of all these different factors. And then we finally get there. I guess, but I've noticed from some of your other posts that isn't necessarily an uncommon thing for shooting days to be that much of ordeal. I'm curious how that all looks from your perspective.
Like the time frame of everything?
Yeah, I mean, just in general, just like what, like these kinds of obstacles that come up, it could be timing, or I think we, got turned around at one point of having difficulty finding the location. And then all sorts of things can happen with these.
Yeah, I know that photo shoots can be like a full day ordeal, especially if you're getting hair and makeup done. Like you got to be ready to be sitting in that chair for several hours for hair and makeup. And then if you're driving from out of state or from far away, which many of my clients are, then there's that. And then there's, hoping that people don't get lost, because I'm usually taking people to some obscure place in the middle of who knows where. And, it's funny because I think you guys got lost on the way to that location. And ever since that shoot, I make sure that I'm like very, very specific with my directions on how to get to that specific location. And I also include in buffer time for getting there, because it is so common for people to be late, to hit traffic, for hair and makeup to go long, for, anything to pop up, or for something to like a difficulty at the photo shoot. I just know that it can be a whole long process. So after years of doing this and seeing that happen over and over and over, I just try to build in enough buffer time so that if anything does happen, we're not too crunched. But I also work really well under pressure. So if I need to, I can.
That always helps.
Yes, for sure. But I mean, I guess it was kind of interesting because when we finally got there, after all the stress and difficulty of that day, I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. It was magical. Like we got into, I mean, we got to the location. We were still running out of daylight. Yes. But I don't know. You did such a great job of helping us to relax and getting us into like the immersion of the story we were trying to tell and of what that photo shoot was. And yeah, it was just spectacular. It's like we could let it all go once we got there. And it just became, I mean, I guess this is kind of your stated goal that you mentioned earlier. It just kind of became like play. It was like make believe in the woods with a
I
photographer.
love that. That makes me so happy knowing that, because I know that it can be so stressful leading up to, and I can usually tell when people are stressed, and it's part of my job to create an atmosphere of comfort. If someone is stressed, to just help them be like, okay, it doesn't matter. That is gone. Anything that happened earlier in the day is over. You can just be here in this moment now. I'm going to work my magic and everything's going to be okay. And I find often, because I always play music at my photo shoots, so I always start by just putting on some music and just kind of explaining to the subject like how this is going to go and what we're going to do. And I, of course, always let people know that I'm going to pose you the entire time, because everyone is always so nervous. So on top of all of the stress that it might take, if you're doing hair, makeup, travel, possibly getting turned around somewhere, on top of that, if you're nervous, like that sucks. So when you show up, I want to immediately ease any nerves by letting people know that I'm going to pose you the entire time. So the posing, the music, I just try to be a calming, gentle presence. Not to toot my own horn, one of the best compliments I hear over and over again is that people always say that I make them feel so comfortable. And I think that is like the best compliment, because I really truly believe that good photos are built on a foundation of comfort. Like if you don't have comfort, there's no good photos happening.
Absolutely.
So knowing that I can meet strangers over and over and over again, and that they consistently feel comfortable with me is just, I mean, that's just music to my ears.
I was just saying, it's funny how like you listen to a lot of professionals and a lot of people whose job it is to facilitate art, and how many different variety of art forms all boil down to the person who's like in charge of facilitator, how much it boils down to them being a good therapist. It's just like, the client's stressing out, they're having a bad day. I just need to like get them down to a level where we can continue the shoot, continue whatever it is we're doing, and then just get it done. And it's always impressive how the people who are really successful at those kinds of jobs are also just like amazing therapists. Just like get them into that nice, calming, centered, whatever they need to get done.
Yeah, for sure.
It is so true. It's so true. I'll tell my husband sometimes I do sometimes feel like I'm like half photographer, half therapist. And it can sometimes be a little bit draining because some people need just like a little bit more than others. But at the same time, like I love that. I love that I can be that for people and that they can have an experience where they feel comfortable and creative and fun and beautiful. So yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah, that actually did occur to me as well as you explained that. I'm like, yeah, she is kind of part therapist, but like I think it goes in film as well, right? Like any good director is. Exactly. Likewise, you need to be able to know how to not just manage, but like work with people in a very human way. And but yeah, I can say attest firsthand. Yeah, Julie is definitely a master at that, and all her little things that she does to set the tone is just so perfect for getting you to let your guard down. And no, I mean that earnestly as well. I mean, like it's really part of what made that magic happen that day. And I will say, people may not know just from looking at your photos, but yeah, the music is such a big part of it. When she pulled out that Bluetooth speaker, that was when it was on. I did not know that was a part of your process until that moment. And then when you started playing music, it's like, oh my goodness, this is epic. Let's go.
It's fully immersive. It gets you in the mood. Yeah.
100%.
Gotta have music.
Yeah. It's like a good GM soundtrack. It's like, it just puts you, it puts you in it. It's like all of a sudden it's like, okay, we were just, driving around Pennsylvania, but now we're in the freaking West Marches, or we're in the, it's go time, and it just allows you to so inhabit the character. It's really fantastic. It's good fun. And for me as well, you're talking about how you always are intentional about letting people know that you're going to be directing the posing. Because for me, that was pretty important because that was my first time ever, I guess, being in any kind of modeling position. I guess I've done, acting in our own things, but like that strikes me as that's very different than shooting for stills.
Yes, it's very in my opinion.
Yeah. And so that, like, being in that position and having that reassurance that you're going to be directing that, obviously, my wife or fiance at that time, Haley, she's done a lot of modeling actually. So she was pretty in her element in that regard. Me I'm more behind the camera than in front of it. And so I was like, I know how to direct that better than I know how to embody it. And so having your gentle massaging of the posing into what was going to work for the composition was definitely very helpful. And that's definitely happy. Yeah, and that's definitely a skill.
For what it's worth, though, I feel like you seemed really comfortable.
Really?
Yeah, like
it's probably the costume and the music that probably helps them.
Honestly, yes. I can say.
I just feel like you both really embraced the nerdiness, and it just made everything so much more epic. I personally feel like you both really rocked it, and I feel like you both seemed really comfortable. But it's nice to know that my little tips and tricks were helpful.
No, for sure. I know that's definitely a skill you've probably developed over a long period of time, because I think directing posing is something that for both filmmakers and photographers, I hear a lot of people who are new to that craft struggle with, because it's not entirely intuitive, because it's a people skill really more than anything. I mean, obviously, your composition, what you're going for, what will look good in frame, but knowing how to instruct people in that is like a whole different beast.
Right. I think a lot of it also comes down to like, what is the story that you're telling? Because if you don't know what story you're telling, then it's really hard to tell people how to pose. Yeah. So I'll often get my posing inspiration or my posing cues that I'll tell people based off of what the story is that we're telling. So that definitely helps.
Mm-hmm. like all of that, directing, the music, everything kind of fallen into place. Yeah, it just kind of made for a wonderful experience. And it's a beautiful shoot that, again, we'll definitely be linking that in the show notes so that you could get a visual on everything we're talking about. I know it's difficult to do a podcast on a photography subject, but we'll make sure
describe all these photos to you.
Yes, but we'll definitely make sure there are accompanying visuals in the show notes so that everybody can see what we're referencing. But yeah, it was really an extraordinary day. And I guess in terms of light-wise as well, kind of circling back to that subject, I know, Lauren, you're asking if she uses any production lights, but it's worth noting that she does augment the light, because I remember you had a bounce on that particular shoot. I don't know if that's something you use regularly.
I think I do remember right now that I did bring that. I usually will always bring a reflector if I'm shooting deep in the woods in the evening, just because it can get so dark.
Shape the light.
Yeah, because I know we had like the light coming in from above over the creek, but most of the forest was pretty dark because, like I said, it was summer. So lots of tree coverage. So yeah, I did bring that to bounce the light onto you guys if I needed it. But that is not something I would say I maybe bring that like 10% of the time, maybe.
Wow. So more often than not, you're just working with like pure natural light then.
Yes.
That's honestly really impressive. But yeah, that bounce definitely was a lifesaver, because I know, just from like looking at how much available light we had, I know it, and especially with the overcast sky and all that, obviously you get great soft lighting from that. It's nice and even. The clouds are a giant blanket of diffuser. But yeah, like being able to bounce that light and get more options, at the very least to get better exposure, is often just like a underrated trick, even if you're just working with natural light.
Yeah, I do remember that day thinking, thank God I brought this reflector, because I know that the time was crunched and it was stormy, and it was just so nice to have the reflector in a pinch in spots where I felt like there weren't catch lights in your eyes, or there were maybe shadows on your faces from the tree coverage. So yeah, that was definitely a lifesaver in that moment. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. It made a huge difference. And I love how when you're doing like single shots on like either Haley or I, we would also have one of us play like production assistant and just hold the bounce, the light while you get the shot. That was good fun.
Yeah. If someone's not in front of camera, I'm putting you to work.
Respect. Amazing. But I guess speaking also of creative journeys, there's actually, I guess, one particular thing I wanted to ask about as well, because I'd seen you made a number of posts about this, and this is just coming to mind. But I guess you've made a few posts where you talk about your kind of journey with your own photography style and discovering it. And you show like you've shown some of your earlier work, which is a lot more of this kind of, how should I say, like the kind of traditional kind of studio looking photography style where everything's kind of bright and white and just very clean looking. And your sort of progression into like this kind of more creative, more high contrast, more colorful kind of expressive photography that you do nowadays. You talk about how that was like a journey to get there. And yeah, can you kind of talk about that, of like discovering your voice that way? What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, that was a huge part of my creative journey. When I first started photography, I was immediately drawn to high contrast and bright colors and just really wild and crazy and fun. And that felt really me. That just felt like my most authentic way of creating. And I guess it was pretty many years down the road when I started my photography business and I started booking clients. I still had this creative, colorful, high contrast editing style. I was still shooting just like really crazy and wild and fun concepts. And as I was trying to book more clients and thinking about how can I create a full-time job out of this for myself, I started kind of just like looking around at the other people around me, the successful people around me, and looking at what were they doing? How were they shooting? What were they shooting? How were they editing? And a lot of these people were photographing weddings, they were photographing babies, and just traditional family work. And they were all shooting in this really light and airy. I mean, that was the style back in 2014. It was light and airy. It was bright. It was desaturated. So I started just shooting all kinds of work like that. I kind of tucked away the creative, fun, high contrast, bright color. I tucked that away in my back pocket, and I kind of just told myself, that's not what is going to make me successful. Shooting in this light and airy style and shooting like weddings and families is what will make me successful. So I kind of like went hard after that for a few years. And I kind of feel like I was pretending to be someone I wasn't. Like I all of a sudden was really obsessed with minimalism and white backdrops and, just like super like neutral, and kind of just like lied to myself that I was really into that. And I was really successful with it. I was booking so many clients in that editing style and shooting that kind of content. But after several years of doing that, I just kind of felt like something was missing. Like I was lacking some kind of joy in my life. And I really missed shooting the fun, creative, conceptual, colorful work that I used to do. But so many people would tell me like that there isn't a market for that. People aren't going to pay you for that kind of photos. The money is in weddings. The money is in families. Stick with this. You'll be successful. And after a few years of doing that, I was just like, I'm miserable. This has killed the joy entirely in photography for me. This isn't fun. And I kind of just decided it was 2017. It was such a pivotal year for me. And I remember being like, no, you know what? No, there is a market for this. If there's not, I will create it. And people will pay for this if I can show them why it's important and why they should have photos like this in their life. And I kind of did like a hard 180 and just flipped totally back to conceptual, creative, colorful. And I started shooting, like, I remember I was doing like 2 to 3 fun, casual, not paid shoots a week of just creative, whatever I wanted to do. So I was still shooting weddings and stuff on the weekends, but I was going hard chasing after this creative, fun, colorful stuff. And then I kind of like stopped posting the traditional light and airy stuff. And I started really just pushing all of my creative stuff and making a name for myself and getting my work out there and really just embracing that this is what I love to do. I'm good at this. Like, if the joy and the passion isn't there, it's going to show through in the work that you're producing. And that's kind of what I realized. Like, I love creating conceptual, fun, imaginative, colorful photography. That's really where my heart truly lies. And if I'm having fun and the passion is there, I'm going to really excel at my job. I'm really going to excel at what I'm doing. And yeah, it kind of snowballed and it became a thing. Little by little, people started booking me for it. And then in 2020, I launched Dream Shoots officially, and it like exploded. So from 2017 to 2020, I kind of just went hard creating this whole new portfolio for myself. And then when I launched what I really wanted to do, it boomed and it was amazing.
Wow. Sometimes people just don't know what they want.
Yeah. That is
yes, really.
That is spectacular, though. And I think there's an important lesson to take away there from creatives of all stripes, because it can be so easy to convince yourself that you want to do what basically is the most commercial, right? In order to
like the most stock.
Yeah, to kind of define your success monetarily and then like chase that and then just embrace whatever is commercial or in vogue at that time. And at the expense of your own like internal light, your fire that kept you going and got you into it to begin with. And I think, yeah, so many people are kind of practicing their craft miserably, you know? And I feel like it's kind of a good lesson to know that it doesn't have to be that way, and that you don't like choosing to do the very niche, weird thing that you want to do doesn't have to mean the death of your career or your financial stability. Like sometimes, like if you really believe in that idea, then you can make it commercial and people will buy it if you can demonstrate its value. Like that is
absolutely,
yeah, that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's so true. If you can explain to people why something is valuable and why they need it in their life, people will buy anything.
For sure. And like,
that's just good marketing.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
And just marketing wise, I can attest, like it is the kind of shoots that you do are so unique and unforgettable. And having the experience of having done one for so momentous an occasion as getting engaged to the love of my life, it's something that, well, first off, is just so us. Like, it's amazing that there's someone out there who is just doing the kind of shoots that we would want for our engagement shoot at the level that you are, like at the level of quality and production. And at the same time, it's just such an invaluable memory that we can like cherish forever now, because who else can say, they had this kind of engagement shoot? It's definitely a slim margin of people. And half of them probably went to you, and so it's something so incredibly valuable. And like I said, it's kind of introduced me to the whole other side of still photography that I didn't know even existed, and that has showed me something I can love about it. So thank you for that.
Oh, I love that.
Well, I've got at least 1 million more questions I can ask you, but I'm afraid we're running out of time. But yeah, oh my goodness, it's been such a pleasure, Julie. Lauren, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I did have a question. Outside of like photography, because like you do a lot of fantasy themed stuff, like you consume a lot of fantasy media, like watch a lot of fantasy movies and read a lot of fantasy books and that kind of thing, or is it just this is something that you've picked up through photography?
It's funny that you're asking me this because I feel like I'm about to be exposed.
Oh no, I asked the wrong question.
No, it kind of feels a little shameful, but you know what? I'm going to just embrace it. I really don't.
Really?
I really
So it's purely
don't.
through your photography.
Yes, I don't really like reading much. And when I do read, I'm usually reading old books from my childhood that give me nostalgia. And then when I'm watching movies, I kind of hate fantasy movies.
Oh no.
I don't tell people that because I people get really up in arms about these things.
Yeah.
But I love Lord of the Rings. Like I have my classics. I love Lord of the Rings. I love Narnia. But there's others. Like I'm a huge Labyrinth fan and I love Totoro. So like yeah, I am watching I love certain fantasy movies, but like I feel like a lot of fantasy movies out there aren't that great. So I don't know. I personally am not watching a ton of fantasy. I'm more so watching things that are inspiring nostalgia in me, or I love dramas. I love stories like that. Yeah. And also this is like super exposing me. I also I've been to the Ren Fair once. So people are always shocked when I'm like, I don't read all of the super popular fantasy books. I really don't watch fantasy movies. I don't go to the Ren Fair. I don't go to these like super popular fantasy balls that are happening right now. I just don't. I don't know. It really is truly just in my photography. I love imagining things myself and bringing them to life in my photos. So I'm just embracing that.
Well, we just got a exclusive podcast reveal. Julie Floro loses her nerd card on the air.
Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like. It kind of feels like I lose some credibility when people are like, "Oh, do you like this movie? Do you like this? Have you seen this? Do you like Game of Thrones?" And I'm like, no, I don't want any of that. It's fine though.
Oh no, 100%. It is completely fine.
at least go to the Ren Fair to find some clients. They've already got their costumes. They're ready to go.
I know. I really do need to do that. That has been on my bucket list for a couple years now.
Yeah,
that will happen.
Like amazing how many of your clients do have that intersection with that culture. Like I'm thinking of like Amelia and on Instagram. Yeah. Janine, yes. Janine. Yeah, Amelia and Janine. Like you've done a ton of shoots with them and they're big like Ren Fair people, and we still never got to take them up on that offer to go to the Ren Fair with them while I was still in Pennsylvania.
You guys should hang out.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the people that I work with are like huge fantasy nerds and they're huge Ren Fair people. And then there's me and I'm like, ooh, my imposter syndrome is showing.
Hey, who says you can't being the enabler of dreams is not a role that can be held exclusively.
That's actually something that I was like thinking about through this whole interview is like trying to define your job in one sentence, and just like something I was just playing with in my head. I think the best way to put it is your job is to take photographic evidence of people's fantasies that exist in their head.
I love that. That is kind of what my like one-liner tag is, that I help people bring their dream photo shoot to life. So I feel like that's whatever's in your head, I help you bring it to life.
Yeah. Like your job is to take photographic evidence of that fantasy.
that is actually that is amazing and really succinct. But yeah. So anyway, we better wind this down to a close. But thank you very much for potting with us. It was a pleasure to converse with you. Everybody, please feel free to check out her Instagram page. We'll link it in the show notes. She does extraordinary work, really captivating stuff. And dare I say also, read the posts that go along with them too, because she's actually a really underrated writer. And I feel like her posts, like the write-ups that she puts into her posts, clearly have like a lot of thought and attention put into them, that I feel like people can get so wrapped up in the photography and miss the quality writing that goes into describing the journey and the story behind each of these shoots. That stuff is also really awesome, but just incredible to have you on the show.
You flatter me. Thank you. That is so nice. It's so nice to know that there's people who read, because I know I can write a lengthy caption, but it's so nice to know that there's people who read it and enjoy it and appreciate it.
Oh my goodness, I'm going to boost that so much because it's so underrated. And I read the captions. Okay, I'll tell you that now. It is part of the joy for me to read those lengthy captions, because I feel like, especially Instagram as a platform, it feels like it's not conducive to like letting people know that that's even there. But you're missing out on some quality content if you're just going for the photos and not also the big write-ups that she does on each one, because those are also pretty spectacular and full of so many insights.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice.
Oh, well, you're most welcome. And again, thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you all very much for listening. This has been the Hypercube podcast. Our guest today has been Julie Floro. This show is mixed and edited by Raphael Pacheco, with original theme music by Mono Memory. Till next time, we'll see y'all later. God bless.
Go live that fantasy.